Inclined, I don't know how many are familiar with Inclined. They do life insurance loans or loans against life insurance policies. They use life insurance policies as collateral. They've got a pretty easy system. We've been connected to them for a little while, just in knowing what they do. There's certainly some places where this fits. Unfortunately, they just put out this 3-page document that I think was a huge mistake on their part, and we're going to kind of go through it piece by piece first and look at what they have. The first thing I want to bring up is something that I came across in the last little while. This was a word that was created back in the 2000s, I think, called paltering. And paltering is really pretty interesting. It is the active use of selective truthful statements to mislead. It's not that they're lying directly. They just use statements that are irrelevant most of the time to what you're talking about. It's considered both more serious and more common than a lie of omission, which is just leaving stuff out. Instead, this one's used a lot of times by politicians. You know what happens when a politician's asked a question they don't want to answer? They just talk about something else, right? They could be talking about something true, but it leads you to believe it has something to do with what's going on. And Yahoo even had a little thing, and magicians use paltering quite a bit. And in the way this works, let's say a friend asks you if you like their outfit, one that you absolutely do not like, and you don't want to hurt their feelings, and you don't want to be honest with them about the fact you don't like it. You say, "Wow, you're so creative." Are they creative? Yeah, maybe. But what do? They interpret the remark as you condoning it, even though you didn't say you like the outfit, right? And so this is used all the time in the financial world. They use it quite a bit, more so than you would imagine. And we've talked about some of those things in the past when we talk about, as an example, mortgages and those kind of things, right? You hear all these things about cumulative interest and stuff that the math is right, but it has nothing to do with the problem or the solution. And this is, I think, the important part right here. It's not that they lie to you, it's that they encourage you to lie to yourself through the assumptions you make from the extra data that they introduce into the conversation. That'll kind of just set the stage. Now, here is just a quick Google search, the first thing that came up about life insurance loans. And this shows you really what we're up against. It could be any company that's direct recognition, but a fixed loan against a Guardian life insurance policy will directly reduce the amount of cash value available to generate dividends. And I want to stop right there. That's kind of true, but it's misleading. What happens is with the direct recognition company, the way most of them work, and not all of them are this way, but the way most of them work is when you have a loan, those funds no longer receive a dividend. Instead, they're moved into a different category and get a direct earnings rate. But what's implied here is that you don't get anything for those funds that have been collateralized. It's absolutely not true. And it's statements like this that send you that way. This
Todd,
means your potential. What's that?
yeah, repeat what you just said. That critical piece, I think, is something that I finally understood this whole issue when I learned that piece.
Yeah, this is technically true that with a direct recognition, the amount of cash value available to generate dividends is reduced by that amount. Now, what people interpret that to mean is that you don't get any earnings on those collateralized funds. That's not true. You just don't get the dividends from the general fund like everybody else does. With Guardian, back when they had 8% loan rates, the contract was set up so that you got 1% less than that is what was credited to your account. Now, that 1% less than the 8%, obviously 7%, was a gross amount before expenses, which replaced the dividend. It's not that you didn't earn anything, but you didn't get a dividend based on earnings from the insurance company. You got a fixed amount based on that loan rate, which prior to them changing it to 5%, dropping that loan rate, it was actually earning at 7% more than everybody else was from the dividend. This is how much is misunderstood. This is what they want you to think is actually going on here, that you actually don't get any income of any kind. You don't technically get a dividend, but you do get earnings on those dollars. It's just in a different place. Dividends are calculated based on the remaining cash value after the loan is taken out, impacting the overall growth of the policy. Yes, not necessarily down, it could be up depending on where we are. Like I said, just before they dropped the interest rates to 5%, if you had a loan with the Guardian, you were actually earning more than everybody else was on those collateralized funds. This really is something we're up against. You've got Pamela Yellen out there saying things early on like, if you have insurance with a direct recognition life insurance company, you're getting ripped off. I mean, it's all these things that these short one-liners that just aren't true. And while you can say the lie in one sentence, it takes a lot on our end to straighten it out and provide the truth. And unfortunately, and that's why we'll get to the numbers after I go through some of this, it comes down to who you're going to believe. You're going to believe me, you're going to believe an article that really looks flashy out there. And I think the unfortunate side is it pushes us to actually have to get out the illustration, look at it, and see what's actually going on, which we'll do. We'll start at the top of the incline document. And what we see here is the true cost of direct recognition policy loans. Now, this is something that they've pulled from a Guardian statement, that Guardian makes an adjustment to align the policy owner's net cost of borrowing with the investment return Guardian would have made had the funds not been borrowed. That is the purpose of the loan rate, whether you're direct recognition, non-direct, or anything in between, right? That's what that's for. It's to keep anybody from being able to take advantage of taking money out of the general fund and hurting everybody else's dividend. Now, when we have non-direct recognition, the only way they can do that is by adjusting the loan rate, hopefully to keep track with whatever the portfolio rate is. If the portfolio rate is higher than the loan rate with a non-direct recognition company, that means everybody is going to be paying for somebody's outstanding loan, all of the policyholders, because their dividends are going to be impacted by the fact that there's less money earned on the loans than on the portfolio. Now, it could go the other way. They could have their loan rate higher than the portfolio rate, and everybody would benefit from somebody else's loan. But that's what happens there. With a direct recognition company, that can never happen. Only the people who have the loan will pay for the loan. It won't impact anybody else's dividend. Why? Because when those dollars come out of the general fund, the earnings are only paid to the non-collateralized dollars. There is a separate calculation done on those collateralized funds. Again, going back to the way Guardian was, 8% for a loan, they were paying 7% gross before expenses and mortality charges out to on just the collateralized dollars.
Seeing mostly shaking heads. Yes, we're good.
All right. Target loan spreads each year, which in 2024 were 1% in the first 20 policy years, 0.5% in 21 plus, if the policy owner is under 60, and 0.1 in year 21 plus, if the policy holder is older than 60. With the Guardian, I mean, this is just a unique thing that they're going through here. It's set up again, the loan rate's 5%, that the amount is 1% less, it's 4% earnings for the first 20 years, and then it's 4.5% in years 21 plus, unless they're over 60, and then it would be actually the loan rate at that point drops to 3.5, would be 3.4. They adjust the loan rate based on age, and so that adjusts what that dividend. It's not really a dividend adjustment, which they say here. It's actually an adjustment on the amount of money that they're going to get against whatever that loan rate is. They've got this nice shiny page here that really is completely wrong. They're showing it as if it comes off of the dividend for the cost, and it doesn't. It's actually in relation to whatever the borrowing rate is. And they even have both sides here showing the L99 newer series with the 5% loan rates, and that it pulls the dividend down by 0.9%. That's not really what happens. What happens is we have a 5% loan rate, and those dollars that are collateralized are paid based on 4%. If we go to the 2006 series over here on the right, the same thing is wrong. They're saying the dividend came down by 2.1. In reality, in this scenario right here, people who had loans were actually earning more because the crediting rate was at 7 rather than only 5.9.
And Todd, you need to reiterate that all of these are at the gross level, not.
Yeah. The same as the 5.9. The 5.9 dividend rate is gross before expenses and mortality charges. The 7%, which was 8% minus 1%, the 7% crediting again was gross, and before mortality expenses, and same thing for the 5 dropping to 4. Now, for a minute, so here they're just showing an example of, oh, if you've got a 5% rate, the dividend adjustment's 1.4. Again, that made up number that they had. Your cost of borrowing is 6.4%. And we'll just keep that. Let's just say for a minute that this is correct. And we're going to go on that premise because they've got some more info. And this is some serious paltering on this page. Right here, what they're saying is on a high income earner, and what they're using is the top, that since they lost a 6.4% dividend that was non-taxable in a 49.3% bracket, that means it cost them 12.62% to have this loan. So the math is correct. 6.4 divided by 50.7 is 12.62. It is accurate math. So here they say the attractive after-tax return is achieved through the dividend, which is reduced when funds are accessed via policy loan. Again, not true. It's shifted out to a different calculation in 2024. As we saw earlier, policies in the first 20 years means foregoing a post-tax return of 6.4. They're basically saying you lost this 6.4% pre-tax earnings, and the result is high earning clients would need to earn 10.16 to 12.62 pre-tax to offset the impact of the policy loan. So what Inclined is saying is if you take a loan from Guardian in a high tax bracket, that loan costs you between 10.16 if you're in Texas to 12.62 if you're in California on a high earner. What was it about? One of the things said about paltering, it leaves so that you actually make your own assumptions and lie to yourself pretty much. And having all this on the page, that's exactly what people will see with this document. Here's another piece on here. Borrowing from a third-party lender such as Inclined instead of a policy loan allows policy owners to continue to earn the attractive post-tax return offered by the dividend. We didn't lose the dividend. Technically we lost the dividend, but we still earned, we still had earnings off of those dollars. They just weren't attributed to growth in the policy. It was a direct amount. So here's where Incline is trying to set themselves up to be, look how good we are in relation to all this. But wait a second, what is this right here? 6% to 7.75 on the loan rate. Where did that come from? My Guardian loan's 5. Well, here's their schedule. If you borrow from $5,000 to $72,000, it's prime for the first year, teaser rate, and then it goes to prime plus 50 basis points. And if you're at 71 to 200,000, it's prime minus 100 basis points, but then it drops to prime or raises to prime minus only 50 basis points and on down the line. And so this is what it actually looks like because prime is currently 7.5%. This is the part they didn't put out there. These are the loan rates. All of them are over the 5% Guardian's charging. And the only way you get this 5.75 is for the first year if you borrow $1 million. So let's go back to this page here where they had the 6.4% they were saying was a cost, which is not accurate, but again, we'll assume it is. 49.3% tax, 12.62 is what you'd have to earn. Well, let's take their numbers and put them in here. They didn't have this part as part of their documentation. So we'll put these in here ourselves. So their numbers of 6% to 7.75, if the loan is a cost before tax in their squirrely calculation, then this is what's going to go on with an inclined loan. Based on their numbers, it's going to take between 9.5% and 15.29% after tax. They just did it one-sided because, again, this has nothing to do with the loan at all. These are just made up numbers. Here's the last page of what they have. And this is all the reasons that you should not take a loan from the Guardian, but instead, or any direct recognition company for that matter, but instead from Inclined. Apply online in 15 minutes or less. Well, I can get my loan in 15 minutes or less from Guardian. Next day draws, maybe that's a little bit faster than what I can do with Guardian. It might take 7 days, a couple of weeks, depending on what the situation is. Evergreen lines, no manual renews, same thing. Not reported to credit bureaus, that's no new one. That's same thing on my life insurance loans. No fees ever. I think this is a lie right here because they're charging a different rate for the smaller loans. My guess is to cover the fees, right? Well, that's not totally true here. It is with my Guardian loan. Access up to 95% of cash value. I think Guardian's somewhere between 90 and 95, so maybe it's a little bit more. Minimum $5,000 credit limit. I can certainly go lower than that with my Guardian loan if I want to. Automatic evaluations for credit limit increases. This is an interesting one. Automatic evaluations for credit limit increases, and there's a little 6 on there. And 6 says when an ILOC, that's Incline's product, account is active and in good standing, Inclined evaluates the credit limit twice per policy per year. Well, guess what? I can do this at any point in time and I get the current value of whatever my policy is if I borrow from the insurance company. I don't have to wait until they do their, evaluation twice a year and be limited by that. Competitive rates, I don't know, maybe. What they left out was the real reason to do this. Go with a third-party lender, it eliminates the direct, non-direct discussions that they've created this whole document to stir the pot and cause trouble with our clients. They've undone the very reason for having the third-party lender. It makes investment loans cleaner and tax deductible. That's a big one. Now that we don't have to worry about it. If we borrow from an actual lender, now then the interest that's paid on a specific product, there's no question if it's an investment dollars. And so the deductibility of that loan is now not a question and may have a lower net cost of funds, we'll see if it does or not. But, I'm sure they put this out to try to get Guardian or any other direct recognition advisors to send business to them. And in the process, what they've done is cause the advisor to now have to explain all of this that we just went through with every client when they say, you mean Guardian's charging me 12.6% to take a loan out? I thought you told me it was 5%. You told me it was 8%. I mean, think about it. Where does their business come from? It comes from referrals for the very advisors that they just alienated. And they've added this kind of information to the searches on Google and everywhere else that say you lose your dividend when you borrow against cash value. Now, technically, it's partially right. You do lose dividend, you don't lose earnings. That's a different look over this and see if you agree, disagree. I want to make sure that before this goes too far that it's correct. And like I say, just send us information after you have a chance to see the document in full size and all that. And I think this really helps get this point across about, how this works. It's just in a different bucket. What Josh said, I think was right online. And that's the thing. Yeah, your dividend is reduced because now the funds are coming from a different place, right? It's coming from another bucket. It doesn't mean you didn't earn any earnings, which is what they're trying to imply whenever anybody's bashing direct recognition. To me, I love direct recognition, and mainly because it's the most fair, right? Only the people with the loan are going to pay for the loan. It's not going to impact anybody else's dividend. Whereas with a non-direct recognition company, everybody's going to be on the hook for the loans. That's going to directly impact everybody's dividend because the money is coming out of the general fund And the only way to replace it is whatever the interest rate is coming back off of those loans. Depending on whether it's higher or lower than the portfolio rate, it's going to positively or negatively impact that overall DIR.
What we're going to do now is shift gears and go to the numerical proof, looking at the life insurance policy in the life values tool for this direct recognition, non-direct recognition issue, and test out the numbers a bit.
What we've gone through is an overview of why this isn't true and whatever else. But again, you're going to believe me, you're going to believe this article, whatever else. And I think we just need, unfortunately, have to step back and let's just, math doesn't lie. There's no paltering with math if you're using accurate formulas, right? And so we're going to get into this policy, and I'm going to do a couple different ones because there is a difference in the rate. This is a Guardian policy since it was Guardian that was listed in that article. There is a different rate for the first 20 years than there is for 21 plus. So we'll do this in two sections. So here I've got, and I just put a minimal PUA in there just to have the option to add some additional dollars. So this is base premium plus a $250 PUA. So this first one has no loan or anything in it. The second one, PLI 2, has a loan taken, and to keep from clouding the issue and extending the loan out, I just used 1 year. There's a $30,000 loan at the beginning of year 11. And at the beginning of year 46, there's an extra 31.5, which is the 30,000 plus the $1,500 in loan interest at 5% paid back. And the loan goes away.
Todd,
sorry,
age 46.
Age 46, the beginning of year 12, yes. So let's go ahead and go through each of these before we pull up the side by side. So PLI 3 is the same loan. This should have had, look at PLI 4. Oh, it did. Never mind. Go back to PLI 3. On this one, you'll see I have an extra $300 added in here to the cash value. It's not a cost to the loan because what I'm looking at is if I borrowed at the best possible rate from Inclined instead, they're charging me 6%. Now we know that's just for 1 year, and they're not going to give me that rate for only a $30,000 loan, but I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt and just look at it from that end. If I add the $300 that we didn't have to pay to their loan back into this policy, what does that look like on the cash? I add an additional PUA in that year of the $300 differential between the 6% loan with Incline versus the 5% with Guardian. The next one, PLI 4, I looked at what would happen if we went to their 7.75% loan. That's an extra $825 that we would have been throwing away with Incline that we could put in the policy instead for the same cost. And then PLI 5, which will make a little more sense later probably, is what it takes to make up the difference, which turns out to be about 6.78%. $533. Let's look at this on the side by side, and then we'll get some questions to make sure that it's kind of making sense.
I'm going to tools and I'm going to side by side, just for those of you that are still new into the truth concepts. And with side by side, we always need to remember to put in our years to illustrate first, which is
30 years is fine.
And what age?
35.
And start
and
age
35.
pops in. Option A, which one do you want me to pick?
I want to pick the no loan.
And 100 years for now?
That's fine. Yep.
All right. And then option B?
Let's pick the loan with no additional dollars going in. Just looking at purely what happens if we take a loan in year 11. All right. And to make this easier to see, what I want to do is click on the view by column, Kim, option up there instead of by asset, and it'll put all the columns together. What we can see is in the orange there, the 15,170 every single year. In the green, that's the second one. That's option B. In the 11th year, we pulled out 14,830, which was the $30,000 loan minus the $15,000 premium. And the next year we put 46,000 back in, which was the loan plus the premium plus the interest to pay the loan off. Cash value. Now, obviously there's a difference in year 11. When we go to year 12, what we see is we lost what the dividend would have done by $504. in that year. Now, it's because the dividend's up. If we'd looked at this a couple of years ago, it would not have been a difference, or maybe going the other way. The dividend is up above what the net earnings were on those collateralized funds. There's $504 difference. And we can see that it grows across that time frame because, again, it lost the dividends for the rest of the time frame as well. Now, instead of looking at this, let's think about this for just a minute. If I borrowed from Inclined, I'd have to pay $300 more for the loan. I couldn't have paid it off with 31.5. It would have taken 31.8 to pay off the loan with Inclined. Don't I have an extra $300 I could put in the policy for the same cost? Let's change this. Instead of just the repay at the beginning of year 12, let's change that to the third option, which is an extra $300 in that year.
All right, so I'm switching option B to PLI 3 by clicking on that, and then it resorts everything.
Now then the difference is $220. Here's the problem. How can I get a loan from Inclined at 6%? We saw what their numbers were. I can't get a loan from Inclined at 6% on $30,000. I can get a teaser rate if I have $1 million, but this loan is going to cost me in year 2 at least 7.75 if I go to Inclined on a loan this size, based on their numbers. Let's look at that.
Back to option B, now to PLI 4, right?
Correct. Right. That's an extra $825 that we would have to pay on that 7.75% loan with Inclined. And if I put it in the policy, I'm going to have $277 more. And that's going to grow out across the rest of the time frame. Now, what I did after this was go back in and say, well, let me just see how much money I can put in there to get it to act just like the original loan, original illustration with no loans. And when we do that, that's this last one down here, $533 added as a PUA. We could see we're within $1 of what the original cash value was, which works out to be the same as Incline charging us 6.78. Again, you can't get 6.78 from them on this size loan. This is, none of the mess that was made up, none of the paltering from the idea of let's see what happens after tax and all that garbage. Let's just look at what we're actually putting into either of these options. And this is how it fits. The loan is actually better from here. Now, would I potentially still go to Incline? Well, I'd find another company maybe. No, to put out some honest paperwork. But, if I've got a business loan or something like that and I want to keep it clean, that would be a reason for me to go use Incline for the loan or another lender. But that's really about the only reason. We can see here it's actually cheaper if I borrow from Guardian and put the difference in the payments into the policy. That's on year 1 to 10. I think we should look at what happens if we look at a policy from the 21-year plus standpoint. We'll put in a 21-year loan, basically do the same thing, but on the next phase. Let's say we didn't do it at 10 years, but we did it at the 20-year mark, which is where Guardian actually shifts the amount on the earnings side, they push it up at that point in time in relation to the loan rate.
Now we're looking at the 21st year.
Well, yeah, still the same, no loan on this one, but yeah.
And option B is a loan at the 21st year.
Assuming we could get 300 or an 8%. Oh, sure. Yeah, do that first. Yeah, just a loan, no Inclined information, anything else. And what we see is here, what happens is in the 21st year, switch it, Kim, if you would, to view by column. We can see that rather than the $500 number difference we saw earlier, it's $348. And again, that's because the differential in the earnings bucket drops after that 21st year with the Guardian. It's probably different with other companies, or how they handle that. But this is just, since they had the Guardian in their documentation, I figured it made more sense to use actual stuff from the company they were bashing. Here we see $348 is the difference. But wait a second. What if we took the extra money we would have to pay on the incline loan, assuming we could get the 6%, which we can on this amount, but let's just look at what 300 does into this policy. It's 6%. Now there's only a $64 difference. If we took the difference in what we're going to have to pay on that other loan for the same cost, we could put that in here without additional cost and create this. What if they were charging us the 7.75 because we're in number 2? This is actually $433 better off than going with incline. And it turns out that $368 will make it to 0, which is, if we could get a loan, basically what we're saying right here is if we could get a loan from inclined at 6.225, there would be a wash. It wouldn't matter which way we went. We could borrow from the Guardian at 5, and the impact is the same as a 6.225 loan from inclined. Forget all the taxes and all that other mess that they tried to throw in there and sway us. It has nothing to do with the equation.